खबरां दा लेखा जोखा मार्च 25/2025 आप सब तक पहुंचा रहे ने। लेकर 62 घर दे विच कोई भी समागम है, ब्याह शादी है जां फिर वडेरी पार्टी का प्रबंध करना है तां हर प्रकार की शराब बीयर ते वाइन खरीदण दे लई लेकर 62 दे उत्ते जरूर पधारो। 6285 किंग जॉर्ज बुलेवार्ड, Surrey।
Avalanche kills 3 heli skiers near Caslow. 3 heli skiers were killed on Monday after being swept away in an avalanche near Caslow in BC's West Kootenay region. The Caslow RCMP says that just before 1 p.m., 2 groups of skiers had finished skiing a ball and were waiting near the tree line of Clute Creek watershed on the east side of Kootenay Lake. According to a police transport helicopter was nearing the group when the pilot observed an avalanche and sounded the siren. One group of skiers was able to run out of harm's way while the other group of 4 was swept away into the tree line, Mounties said in a statement on Tuesday. While recovery efforts were initiated, 3 men were found dead: a 44-year-old man from Whistler, a 45-year-old man from Idaho, US, and 53-year-old guide from Caslow. A 4th man, 40, from Nelson, was critically injured, police add. The BC Coroner Service has been called to help with the investigation, the Caslow RCMP says.
खबरां मिलियां जी खास तौर ते Caslow RCMP वालियां दा दसना कि 3 स्की वाले जिहड़े व्यक्ति ने ਉਹ एवलांच ਦੀ लपेट ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ आ गए और याद रहे उन्होंने ये भी दस्या कि किस प्रकार वो इंतजार कर रहे सन ਤਾਂ जो ही हैलीकॉप्टर जिहने पिक करना सी उसने देखा कि एवलांच टुट रही है ਤਾਂ ਉਸਨੇ ਸੂਚਿਤ ਕੀਤਾ। ਇੱਕ ਗਰੁੱਪ ਤਾਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਆਪ ਨੂੰ ਬਚਾਉਣ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਾਮਯਾਬ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ ਪਰ ਦੂਸਰਾ ਗਰੁੱਪ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਐਵਲਾਂਚ ਦੀ ਲਪੇਟ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆ ਗਿਆ ਜਿਸ ਦੇ ਕਾਰਨ 3 ਦੀ ਮੌਤ ਹੋ ਗਈ ਜਿਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਿ 2 ਸੈਲਾਨੀ ਸਨ ਤੇ ਇੱਕ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਗਾਈਡ ਸੀ। ਚੌਥਾ ਵਿਅਕਤੀ ਕਾਫੀ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਉਸਨੂੰ ਸਖਤ ਸੱਟਾਂ ਲੱਗੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਔਰ ਜੇਰੇ ਇਲਾਜ ਹੈ।
Loblaw expanding body-worn camera program in BC. In a bid to protect its workers and reduce what Loblaw calls violent incidents, the number of stores in British Columbia that have employees wear body-worn cameras is increasing. Loblaw, which owns properties like Superstore and Shoppers Drug Mart, confirms that the number of stores now participating is going up to 11, 2 stores previously taking part. Our expansion of the pilot to select stores in BC, Ontario, and Manitoba highlights our ongoing commitment to creating a safer shopping environment for all, it said in a statement. Early results suggest body-worn cameras may help reduce violent incidents, but a broader long-term evaluation across more stores and banners is needed to assess their full impact. Loblaw hasn't yet announced which stores will be part of this expansion or where they are located. The cameras are only activated after verbal confirmation when colleagues are faced with a situation where there is a risk of escalation and fear for one's safety and or the safety of others. Only trained asset protection representatives, third-party security, store management and additional team members where applicable will be wearing the cameras, and participating in this pilot is voluntary. The Retail Council of Canada says retail-related violence is on the rise in Canada, adding employers are being put into unnecessary physical danger on a day-to-day basis. It says it's trying to find solutions to help address the issue, including working with police and government officials.
ਲਾਬਲਾ ਕੰਪਨੀਆਂ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਖਾਦ ਪਦਾਰਥ ਦੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸਟੋਰ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਸੂਚਿਤ ਕੀਤਾ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਆਪਣੇ EMPLOYEES ਨੂੰ ਹੁਣ ਕੰਮ ਕਰਨ ਵਾਲਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਬੋਡੀ ਕੈਮਰਾ ਉਹ ਪਹਿਨਾਉਣਗੇ। याद रहे पहला ही उन्होंने जोड़े 2 स्टोर ने उन्होंने ये पायलट प्रोग्राम है जोड़ा जारी सी पर हुण इन्हां दी गिणती 12 वधा के कर दी गई है और कारण उन्होंने दस्सिया कि मौजूदा हालातां दे विच खास तौर दे स्टोर्स दे विच जोड़ा वायलेंट बिहेवियर हिंसक वर्ताव है जोड़ा उस दे मद्देनज़र ये फैसला उन्होंने वालों लिया गया पर यह सूचित नहीं किया गया कि यह पायलट प्रोग्राम किहड़े-किहड़े स्टोर्स दे विच होएगा। और नाल दी नाल उन्होंने इस गल का भी खुलासा किया कि पिछले समय दे विच वध रहे वायलेंस इंसीडेंट के कारण EMPLOYEE जिहड़े कि रोजाना अपना काम कर लिए उत्थे जांदे आ उन्हां दी जान नूं जोखम दे विच पाया जांदा है ते नाल दी नाल उन्होंने कहा इस सुरक्षित वातावरण सिरजण दे विच होर ज़्यादा मददगार साबित होएगा।
Multiple businesses left reeling after fire tears through Surrey Strip Mall. A devastating fire tore through a Surrey strip mall early Monday morning, and multiple businesses have been left unsure about what comes next. Among those affected is a local pharmacy, where employees Soji Alakofa expressed concern over the future of the pharmacy's operations. "We don't know the extent of this. They could need to pull the whole thing down. I don't know. By the time they do their own professional assessment in terms of what they need to do, and that's when they will determine what they have in mind for the whole structure," Alakofa explained. Alakofa voiced worries about the impact on local residents who rely on the pharmacy for their medication. "Certainly, we have some medication in the safe. Those ones should be good, but we don't want any medication like concern for the public too. If medication in boxes are smoke damaged, we don't know. We have to be able to access to see deposit of soot or smoke or carbon," Alakofa explained. Shortly after 2:30 a.m. Monday, Surrey Police Service officers were patrolling the city centre neighbourhood when they noticed smoke and a burning smell coming from a small strip mall near 108th Avenue and City Parkway. Speaking to Surrey Deputy Fire Chief Rich Bodnack said crews did second alarm protocol, sending additional fire trucks and personnel. "We did an aerial operation suppressing and extinguishing the fire," he explained, adding that 9 fire trucks and 27 firefighters attended the scene. The damaged strip mall also houses the All Nations Church, which serves the area's Spanish and African-speaking communities. The restaurant there is completely gone, and there is the religious worship center too that's affected, said Alakofa, while the Surrey Police Service has confirmed that the fire is not suspicious and a suspect has been released. Investigators are still working to determine the cause of the blaze.
ਪਿਛਲੇ ਦਿਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਰੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੱਕ ਛੋਟੀ ਸਟ੍ਰਿਪ ਮਾਲ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕਿ 60 ਐਵਨਿਊ ਤੇ ਸਿਟੀ ਸੈਂਟਰ ਦੇ ਪਾਸ ਪਾਰਕਵੇ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਸਥਿਤ ਸੀ, ਉੱਥੇ ਲੱਗੀ ਹੋਈ ਅੱਗ ਤੋਂ ਪ੍ਰਭਾਵਿਤ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਵਪਾਰੀ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਆਵਾਜ਼ ਉਠਾਈ ਹੈ। ਖਾਸ ਤੌਰ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਉਸ ਸਟ੍ਰਿਪ ਮਾਲ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਚਰਚ ਵੀ ਸੀ ਤੇ ਨਾਲ ਫਾਰਮੇਸੀ ਸੀ। ਫਾਰਮੇਸੀ ਦੇ ਇੱਕ ਇੰਪਲਾਈ ਨੇ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਕਿ ਕਿਸ ਪ੍ਰਕਾਰ ਬਹੁਤ ਸਾਰੇ ਏਰੀਆ ਦੇ ਲੋਕ ਨੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਫਾਰਮੇਸੀ ਦੇ ਉੱਪਰ ਨਿਰਭਰ ਨੇ ਆਪਣੀ ਦਵਾਈ ਬੂਟੀ ਲੈਣ ਦੇ ਲਈ, ਪਰ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਨਹੀਂ ਪਤਾ ਕਿ ਕਦੋਂ ਇਸ ਦਾ ਕੀ ਭਵਿੱਖ ਹੋਏਗਾ। ਨਾਲ ਉਸਨੇ ਡਿਟੇਲਸ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਦਿੱਤੀਆਂ ਕਿ ਕੁਝ ਸਾਡੀਆਂ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਦਵਾਈਆਂ ਨੇ ਉਹ ਸੇਫ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸੁਰੱਖਿਅਤ ਹੁੰਦੀਆਂ ਨੇ, ਪਰ ਕੁਝ ਦਵਾਈਆਂ ਨੇ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਨਹੀਂ ਪਤਾ ਕਿ ਉਸ ਦਾ ਫਾਇਰ ਡੈਮੇਜ ਹੋਇਆ ਜਾਂ ਨਹੀਂ। ਯਾਦ ਰਹੇ ਇਸ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਅਫਰੀਕਨ ਭਾਈਚਾਰੇ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਚਰਚ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਵੀ ਉਸ ਸਟ੍ਰਿਪ ਮਾਲ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸੀ, ਔਰ ਇੱਕ ਨਾਲ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਸੈਂਟਰ ਵੀ ਸੀ ਜਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੇ ਭਵਿੱਖ ਬਾਰੇ ਅਜੇ ਕੁਝ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਿਹਾ ਜਾ ਸਕਦਾ। ਯਾਦ ਰਹੇ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਅੱਗ ਸੀ ਪਿਛਲੇ ਦਿਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਰਾਤ ਨੂੰ 2:30 ਵਜੇ ਦੇ ਕਰੀਬ ਉਸ ਏਰੀਏ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਰੀ ਪੁਲਿਸ ਸਰਵਿਸ ਦੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਪੁਲਿਸ ਅਫਸਰ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਨੋਟਿਸ ਕੀਤੀ ਸੀ, ਜਿਸ ਨੂੰ ਕਿ ਬੁਝਾ ਲਿਆ ਗਿਆ, ਪਰ ਅਜੇ ਤੱਕ ਉਸ ਦੀ ਡਿਟੇਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਗਈ ਕਿ ਇਸ ਸਟ੍ਰਿਪ ਮਾਲ ਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਭਵਿੱਖ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਕੀ ਹੋਏਗਾ। ਹਰ ਵਪਾਰੀ ਇਸ ਗੱਲ ਤੋਂ ਚਿੰਤਤ ਨੇ।
Israel releases Oscar-winning Palestinian director after he was attacked by the West Bank settlers. Israeli authorities released an Oscar-winning Palestinian director who was detained by the army after being attacked by Jewish settlers in the occupied West Bank. He said they beat him in front of his home while filming the assault. Hamadan Balal and the other directors of No Other Land, which looks at the struggles of living under Israel occupation, had mounted the stage at the 97th Academy Awards in Los Angeles earlier this month when it won the award for Best Documentary Film. On Tuesday, with bruises on his face and blood on his clothes, he was released from an Israeli police station in the West Bank settlement of Kiryat Arba. He and 2 other Palestinians who had been attacked and detained were driven to a nearby hospital. Balal said he was held at an army base and forced to sleep under a freezing air conditioner. "I was blindfolded for 24 hours, he told the Associated Press. All the night I was freezing. It was a room. I couldn't see anything. I heard the voice of soldiers laughing about me." Leah Simel, the attorney representing the 3 men, said they received only minimal care for their injuries from the attack and that she had no access to them for several hours after their arrest. She had earlier said they were accused of throwing stones at a young settler, allegations they deny. Palestinian residents say around 24 settlers, some masked, some carrying guns, and some in military uniforms, attacked the West Bank village of Susia on Monday evening as residents were breaking their fast during the Muslim holy month of Ramadan. Soldiers who arrived pointed their guns at the Palestinians while settlers continued throwing stones, they said. The Israeli military said Monday it has detained 3 Palestinians suspected of hurling rocks of forces and 1 Israeli civilian involved in what it described as a violent confrontation. On Tuesday, it referred further queries to police who did not immediately respond to a request for comment. "I'm dying." Lamia Balal, the director's wife, said she heard her husband being beaten outside their home as she huddled inside with 3 children. She heard him screaming, "I'm dying," and calling for an ambulance. When she looked out the window, she saw 3 men in uniform beating Balal with the butts of their rifles and another person in civilian clothes who appeared to be filming the violence. "Of course, after the Oscar, they had come to attack us more," Lamia said. "I felt afraid." West Bank settlers are often armed and sometimes wear military-style clothing that makes it difficult to distinguish them from soldiers. On Tuesday, a small blood stain could be seen outside their home, and the car's windshield and windows were shattered. Neighbors pointed to a nearby water tank with a hole in the side that they said had been punched by the settlers. Balal said he was attacked by a well-known settler who had threatened him in the past. The settler can be seen with other masked men in a widely circulated video from August in which they threatened Balal. "This is my land. I was given it by God," the settler says in the video, in which he also uses profanity and tries to get Balal to fight him. "Next time it won't be nice," the settler said. Film looked at Palestinian struggle to stay on the land. On the Other Land, which won the Oscar this year, was Best Documentary, chronicles the struggle by residents of the Masafar Yatta area to stop the Israeli military from demolishing their villages. The joint Israeli-Palestinian production was won a string of international awards, starting at the Berlin International Film Festival in 2024. It has also drawn ire in Israel and abroad, and when Miami Beach proposed ending the lease of the movie theater that screened it, Basil Adra, another of the film's co-directors, who is a prominent Palestinian activist in the area, said there's been a massive upswing in attacks by settlers and Israeli forces since the Oscar win. Nobody can do anything to stop the pogroms, and soldiers are only there to facilitate and help the attacks, he said. "We are living in the dark days here in Gaza and all of the West Banks. Nobody's stopping this." Masked settlers with sticks also attacked Jewish activists in the area on Monday, smashing their car windows and slashing tires, according to Josh Kimmelman, an activist with the Center of Jewish Nonviolence. Video provided by the group showed a masked settler shoving and swinging his fist into activists in a dusty field at night. Open-ended military rule. Israel captured the West Bank in the 1967 Mid-East War, along with the Gaza Strip and East Jerusalem. The Palestinians want all 3 of their future states and view settlement growth as a major obstacle to a 2-state solution. Most of the international community considers the settlement illegal. Israel was built well over 100 settlements, home to over 500,000 settlers who have Israeli citizenship. The 3 million Palestinians in the West Bank live under seemingly open-ended Israeli military rule, with the Western-backed Palestinian Authority administering population centers. The Israeli military designated Masafar Yatta in the southern West Bank as a live fire training zone in 1980s and ordered residents, mostly Arab Bedouin, to be expelled. Around 1,000 residents have largely remained in place, but soldiers regularly move in to demolish homes, tents, water tanks, and olive orchards, and Palestinians fear outright expulsion could come at any time. The Palestinians also face threats from settlers by by outposts. Palestinians and right groups say Israel forces usually turn a blind eye to settler attacks or intervene on behalf of the settlers. The war in Gaza has sparked a surge of violence in the West Bank, with the Israel military carrying out wide-scale military operations that have killed hundreds of Palestinians and displaced tens of thousands. There has been a rise in settler violence as well as Palestinian attack on Israel.
ਅੱਜ ਖਾਸ ਤੌਰ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਗੱਲ ਆਈ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਇਜ਼ਰਾਈਲ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਦੇ ਉੱਥੇ ਦੇ ਹਾਲਾਤਾਂ ਬਾਰੇ ਨੋ ਅਦਰ ਲੈਂਡ ਡਾਕੂਮੈਂਟਰੀ ਜਿਹਨੂੰ ਕਿ ਪਿਛਲੇ ਕੁਝ ਕੁ ਸਮਾਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਆਸਕਰ ਦਾ ਅਵਾਰਡ ਮਿਲਿਆ ਔਰ ਵਡੇਰੀ ਮਾਤਰਾ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਦੇਖੀ ਪਰਖੀ ਤੇ ਸਰਾਹੀ ਜਾ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ। ਉਸ ਤੇ ਬਣਾਉਣ ਵਾਲੇ ਨੂੰ ਫੌਜੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਉਠਾ ਕੇ ਮਾਰ ਕਟਾਈ ਕੀਤੀ ਔਰ ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਉਪਰੰਤ ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਛੱਡਿਆ ਗਿਆ ਹੈ। याद रहे गाजा दे विच जो विचर रहा है, जो आम लोगों ਨੂੰ फेस कर रहे हैं एवरी डे, उस आधारित यह डॉक्यूमेंट्री है जिसका नो अदर लैंड ना है और इसकी अंतरराष्ट्रीय पद्धर के उत्ते शलाघा भी हो रही है। पर इस दे घरेलू पक्ष दे विच जिथे वैसट बैंक ते गाजा दे विच लोकां दे उत्ते तशद्दद किया जा रहा है, उस दे विच वाधा होण दीयां जिहड़ियां खबरां ने वो भी सामने आ रही ने। बिलाल ने अपनी हड्डबीती भी दसी किस प्रकार उसने इस डॉक्यूमेंट्री के कारण उस दे नाल किस प्रकार का जिहड़ा बर्ताव है वो होया जिहड़ा कि आम पब्लिक दे नाल ऑलमोस्ट डे टू डे लाइफ स्टाइल दे विच हुंदा। उसने दस्सिया कि जिहड़े सैटलर ने जदों इस तरह के बर्ताव करते हैं, हिंसक वारदातां करते हैं, तो इजराइल दी जिहड़ी फौजी ने वो इस वल नूं अपना ध्यान ही नहीं दिंदे बल्कि अखी परे कर लैंदे ने। याद रहे एक चल रही जिहड़ी लड़ाई है इस दे विच मनुखी घाण है जिहड़ा वो अपने आप दे विच एक नवां इतिहास सिरज रहा है।
Vancouver General Hospital nurse strangled by patient rescued by colleagues union. The BC Nurses Union says it's outraged after an incident earlier this month in which a nurse was violently attacked while on the job at Vancouver General Hospital. Union President Adrian Gear says on March 13th the nurse was strangled to the point of unconsciousness. It happened in the Segal building at the Vancouver General Hospital, which is a building where they have units for inpatient psychiatric patients, and this patient had a known history of violence. Staff had raised concerns the nurse was not dealing with the patient directly and was not aware that she was becoming a target, and she sustained a very serious assault, Gear explained. She says the victim had to be dragged to safety by her colleagues. Gear says the nurse will be off work while she recovers. There's certainly the physical injury, but the psychological injury is, generally speaking, what takes the longest to overcome, if ever, said Gear. The union says it's asked for security personnel for the psychiatric unit at VGH where this happened, but so far hasn't had that demand met yet. Yes, safety is a primary factor in the province's ability to retain nurses. This is very distressing, not only for this nurse but also for her colleagues. It's an assault that should never have happened, and we are learning of it. I would say serious assaults with increased frequency. It's alarming that health authorities are not heeding these wake-up calls, and how can we expect nurses to stay in practice when clearly nursing is a dangerous job? The Ministry of Health has added new security officers at 30 hospitals across the province and is still looking at where it can expand that program to more facilities. Vancouver Coastal Health says another patient was also assaulted in the same incident. The staff member is recovering at home while the patient who was assaulted was treated at the hospital, said a statement from the health authority. In a statement Tuesday morning, the Vancouver Police Department says it has identified a suspect. This incident was reported to VPD on March 16 and is now under investigation, Sergeant Steve Edison said.
वैंकूवर जनरल हॉस्पिटल विखे एक पेशेंट ने एक नर्स के उत्ते हमला किया, उसका गला घुटिया, जिस दे कारण वो हुण इस वक्त जेरे इलाज छुट्टी काम तो बाहर है। पर इस दे नाल एक वड्डा सवाल उठदा है ਕਿ ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਨਰਸ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਅਟੈਕ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਤਕਰੀਬਨ ਮਾਰਚ ਦੇ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੋਇਆ ਸੀ ਔਰ ਵੈਨਕੂਵਰ ਪੁਲਿਸ ਡਿਪਾਰਟਮੈਂਟ ਨੂੰ ਇਸ ਬਾਰੇ ਸੂਚਨਾ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੈ 16 ਤਰੀਕ ਨੂੰ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਗਈ ਸੀ, 16 ਮਾਰਚ ਨੂੰ, ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕਿ ਹੁਣ ਉਹ ਇਸ ਦੀ ਤਫਤੀਸ਼ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ। ਇਹ ਗੱਲ ਵੀ ਸਾਹਮਣੇ ਆਈ ਕਿ ਕਿਸ ਪ੍ਰਕਾਰ ਉਸ ਔਰਤ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਹਮਲਾ ਕਰਨ ਵਾਲਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਪੇਸ਼ੈਂਟ ਹੈ ਉਸ ਮਾਨਸਿਕ ਰੋਗਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਪੀੜਤ ਹੈ ਔਰ ਉਹ ਉਸ ਦਾ ਇੱਕ ਹਿੰਸਕ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਪਿਛੋਕੜ ਵੀ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਨਾਲ ਦੀ ਨਾਲ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਕਿਸ ਪ੍ਰਕਾਰ ਬੜੀ ਮੁਸ਼ਕਲ ਨਾਲ ਉਸ ਪੇਸ਼ੈਂਟ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਕੀ ਹੋਰ ਸਟਾਫ ਨੇ ਉਸ ਨਰਸ ਨੂੰ ਬਚਾਇਆ ਔਰ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਹੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਸਰੀਰਕ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਚੋਟਾਂ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਤਾਂ ਛੇਤੀ ਰਿਕਵਰ ਇਨਸਾਨ ਹੋ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਹੈ, ਪਰ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਮਾਨਸਿਕ ਤੌਰ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਵੱਢਿਆ ਹੋਇਆ ਤੌਖਲਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਛੁਟਕਾਰਾ ਪਾਉਣ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਦੇਰ ਲੱਗਦੀ ਹੈ। ਪਰ ਇਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਸਵਾਲ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਖੜਾ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ ਕਿ ਸਿਹਤ ਸੇਵਾਵਾਂ ਦੇ ਖੇਤਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇਸ ਪ੍ਰਕਾਰ ਦੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਹਿੰਸਕ ਹਮਲੇ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਿੰਨੀ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਵੱਡੀ ਮਾਤਰਾ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵਾਧਾ ਹੋਇਆ ਔਰ ਯੂਨੀਅਨ ਨੇ ਵੀ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਸੁਰੱਖਿਅਤਾ ਦੀ ਮਨਸ਼ਾ ਹਿੱਤ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਸਿਕਿਉਰਿਟੀ ਹੈ ਉਸ ਦੀ ਮੰਗ ਕੀਤੀ, ਜਿਹਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਕੋਈ ਬਹੁਤਾ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਤਵੱਜੋ ਨਹੀਂ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਗਈ ਸੋ ਫਾਰ। ਪਰ ਉਧਰੋਂ ਹੈਲਥ ਅਥਾਰਟੀਜ਼ ਨੇ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਕਿ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ 30 ਹੋਰ ਵਿਅਕਤੀਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਹਸਪਤਾਲਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸੁਰੱਖਿਅਤ ਸਿਕਿਉਰਿਟੀ ਦੇ ਤੌਰ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਲਾਮਬੰਦ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੋਇਆ ਹੈ।
Border officials offer a real look inside Canada's largest immigration holding center. When Osama al-Haddad arrived from Yemen and applied for asylum at Toronto's Pearson Airport, he was taken into custody because he lacked documentation to prove his identity. He spent over a month in Canada Border Service Agency Immigration Holding Center near the airport and was released on February 19th after his identity was verified. But his experience wasn't anything like a detention, he said. Al-Haddad was among 70 detainees kept there at the time for reasons that included immigration violations, criminal convictions, and lack of proper documents. One of thousands who go through 3 such detention centers in Canada in the course of a year. In a rare move, the Canadian press and several other media outlets were recently invited to visit the sprawling 3-story compound in Toronto's West End. It's a place where detainees can move freely within their dormitory-style units, watch television, and interact with their roommates. The building has a gym, multi-faith prayer room, a library, and even a menu that offers detainees a choice of meals, taking into account their dietary restrictions. Weekly yoga classes and addiction counseling are also offered. Al-Haddad said he was treated with dignity and respect after fleeing Yemen. Where a decade-long civil war has led one of the worst humanitarian crises in the world. They cared about our health, our food and drinks, our daily routine, providing all our needs. They make you feel human, he said about officers at the holding center. I'm surprised by a good treatment, how they treated us, he said through a translator after his release. I would be treated this way only in my home. The tour of the detention center provided starkly different picture of how Canada's immigration authorities are treating those in their custody compared to the aggressive approach taken in the United States amid an immigration enforcement crackdown. Since US President Donald Trump took office, there have been numerous reports of foreign nationals being held in American detention facilities for days or weeks without proper access to lawyers or contact with the outside world. They include a Canadian woman who was held in an inhumane condition for about 12 days in a privately run Arizona detention center after her visa was denied at the US-Mexico border, according to her family. Trump has embarked on a mass deportation campaign that has emboldened US officials to even send some migrants to the notorious detention facilities in Cuba's Guantanamo Bay, where terrorism suspects were held and tortured after the 9/11 attacks. At the CBSA facility in Toronto, detention of foreign nationals, it's not meant to be rehabilitation or punitive, said Sajjad Bhatti, the Director of Immigration Enforcement Operations. He said most people there have been held due to identity or flight risk issues, but there are also people who have criminal convictions and pose significant risk to public safety and are in the process of being removed from Canada. The Toronto Immigration Holding centers is the largest of the 3 in Canada and can accommodate 195 people, followed by one in Laval, Quebec with about 150 beds and one in Surrey, BC with 70 beds. More than 4,000 detentions were recorded across those 3 centers between 2023 and 2024, CBSA data shows. Nearly 13,000 individuals across the country were also enrolled last year in the alternative to detention programs that allows the release under certain conditions, according to data from the federal government. 54 people were detained in prisons. Robert Israel Blanche, an immigration lawyer who has worked with CBSA detainees for decades, said immigration holding centers have come a long way over the years, but there's still lots of room for improvement. He said he's currently representing a Sri Lankan national who is being held at the Toronto Centre because he couldn't prove his identity and is considered to be a flight risk. While his client is treated well in a clean, safe facility and is able to call his wife in India, Blanche argued he shouldn't be there in the first place. Nobody likes being in detention, so that what clients tell me is get me out, he said, arguing that this isn't justifiable to keep anyone in those facilities due to a lack of proper documentation being a flight risk. People in such circumstances shouldn't be in the same holding facility as those who have serious criminal charges or convictions, Blanche said. He said timely access to lawyers and legal help is still a massive issue for immigration detainees across Canada. Canada has reported 16,860 foreigners in 2024, a nearly 11% increase over the year before and more than double compared to 2022, according to the CBSA's latest data. The agency said it aims to remove 20,000 inadmissible foreigners each year from 2025 until 2027 as part of Ottawa's $1.3 billion plan to boost border security and immigration enforcement in response to Trump's tariffs threat. The federal government is committed to increasing the removals by 25% in the next 3 years. Carl Desmarais, the Director General of Inland Enforcement Directorate at the CBSA, said in a phone interview. Desmarais said the agency has received $55 million from the government to increase its enforcement capacity, and that is largely going to be for us to be able to conduct additional removals. As of December, 485,395 foreigners were on the agency's removal inventory, meaning they can be processed for deportation. The CBSA said the removal of more than 30,000 foreign nationals, with Mexican, Indian, and American citizens topping the list, is in progress. The agency said it cannot locate nearly 30,000 individuals who are labeled as wanted. Those are individuals that would be under an enforceable removal order. They don't necessarily show up the removal and then we issue a warrant. In one unit at the Toronto detention facility, a small group of women chatted in the living room as reporters were allowed to enter one of their bedrooms. Inside, there were 2 beds and one of them had a Bible and a folded brown blanket on it. There was a shelf in the corner of the room where the occupant kept her belongings. Those arriving at the Toronto detention center are first medically assessed and offered a meal or anything else they need, such as clothing, Bhatti said. After 48 hours, they have their first admissibility hearing before a member of the Immigration Refugee Board of Canada who decides whether to keep or release the detainee. But he said the focus is on making sure those who pose serious safety risk don't walk free. If a detainee is kept for longer than 3 weeks, then the board schedules a monthly hearing until the case is settled. The average time each detainee spends at the center is 15 days, officials said. If the immigration board decides to deport someone, there is an appeal process that can take months. But if a detainee accepts deportation, the removal takes between 1 or 2 weeks and is often done on commercial flights, Bhatti said. Throughout the process, access to interpreters, legal counsel, and refugee service is granted, CBSA officials said. The number of children had at detention centers has been steadily declining, dropping to single digits in the past 8 years, the CBSA said. 3 minors along with their guardians were held at the Toronto Centre so far this year, officials said when the Canadian press visited. It is important to note that although we have the capability of detaining minors, we have had a lot of ministerial direction over the years that detention of a minor is a measure of absolute last resort, Patti said. But Blanchet said no minor should ever be detained. It's unfathomable. I'm not here to say that these are easy, simple solutions for the government, but no child, in my view, should be in a detention center.
ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਡਿਟੈਂਸ਼ਨ ਸੈਂਟਰ ਨੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਖਾਸ ਤੌਰ ਤੇ ਇਮੀਗ੍ਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਦੇ ਮੁਤਲਕ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਅੰਦਰ ਇੰਨੀ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਦਾਰੋਮਦਾਰ ਹੈ ਉਸ ਦੀ ਤਸਵੀਰ ਇੱਕ ਨੇ ਬੜੀ ਖਿੱਚ ਕੇ ਦੱਸੀ ਹੈ। ਆਪਣੇ ਏਰੀਆ ਤੋਂ ਪਹੁੰਚਿਆ ਹੈ ਇੱਥੇ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪੇਪਰਾਂ ਦੀ ਘਾਟ ਕਾਰਨ ਟੋਰਾਂਟੋ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੱਡੇ ਡਿਟੈਂਸ਼ਨ ਸੈਂਟਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਰੱਖਿਆ ਗਿਆ ਤਾਂ ਉਸਨੇ ਇਹ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਕਿ ਇਸ ਡਿਟੈਂਸ਼ਨ ਸੈਂਟਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਸ ਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸਟੇ ਹੈ ਬੜਾ ਰਿਸਪੈਕਟਫੁਲ ਰਿਹਾ और खास तौर पर गवांढी मुल्क के जिस प्रकार के इमीग्रेशन के मुतलक डिटेंशन सेंटर की हालत है जिस दे विच हवाला BC की एक औरत नूं 12 दिन तक जिस प्रकार मैक्सीको तो बार्डर क्रॉस करते हुए पकड़ के रखा गया उसका हालातों के कंपैरिजन करते हुए इसका भी हवाला दिता गया। याद रहे ये जिहड़े डिटेंशन सेंटर ने ये 3 ने बहुत ज़्यादा वड्डे ने। सब तो वड्डा जिहड़ा सेंटर आ वो टोरांटो दे विच है वैस्ट एंड विखे ते दूसरा लवाल क्वेबैक दे विच और तीसरा सरी BC विखे है जिस दे विच के वो लोग जिन्हां पास कागज पत्तर पूरे नहीं हैं जां फ्लाइट रिस्क है जां फिर उन्हां दा कोई भी हिंसक जिहड़ा बर्ताव जां पिछोकड़ा उस दे कारण रखे जाते हैं। और इस दे उत्ते सवाल ये भी पैदा होया कि हिंसक लोगों नूं आम लोग कागज पत्तरां दी कमी के कारण जिहड़े रखे जाते हैं उन्हां दे नाल नहीं रखा जाना चाहिए। सवाल नाल ये भी उठा कि कैनेडा के इस डिटेंशन सेंटर दे विच की बच्चे हैं जिन्हां दी गिणती के सिंगल डिजिट दे हेठां हेठां है पर नाल सवाल ये भी उठाए गए कि बिल्कुल एक भी किसी भी बच्चे नूं डिटेंशन सेंटर दे विच नहीं रखा जाना चाहिए जदों कि अधिकारियों ने यह स्पष्ट किया कि जदों होर बिल्कुल ही कोई भी हल नहीं हुंदा उन्हां ही हालतां दे विच जिहड़े बच्चे ने इन्हां नूं डिटेंशन सेंटर दे विच रखा जांदा है।
Liberals hold 6-point lead over Conservatives, Lekha poll. The federal Liberals are pushing further ahead of the Conservatives in voter support, and almost 1 in 2 Canadians surveyed say they think the Liberals will win the election, a new poll suggests. The survey conducted by Lekha for the Canadian press reports that 44% of the decided voters surveyed would vote Liberal in the upcoming election, ahead of the Conservatives at 38%. The poll surveyed 1,599 Canadians between March 21st and March 23rd, which includes the first day of the election and the 2 days leading into it. Because the poll was conducted online, it can't be assigned as a margin of error. A Lekha poll released 1 week earlier showed the Liberals with 42% support compared with 39% for the Conservatives. It was the first time since early 2023 the Liberals took the lead. In a poll taken 2 weeks ago by Lekha, the Liberals and Conservatives were tied at 37% each. The current poll had the NDP at only 6%, down 3 points from the last survey. Sebastien Dallaire, Lekha's executive vice president for Eastern Canada, said in an interview that what used to be a small lead for the Liberals is now statistically significant lead for 6 points. Dallaire has pointed out that the decline of the NDP has reaffirmed that this election is a two-horse race. This survey that marks the start of the campaign, unfortunately for the NDP, just confirms that as of now they are really far behind. The floor seems to have disappeared under their feet. It's a complete turnaround for the Liberals since the start of the year. On January 13th, a week after former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced his intention to resign, the Liberals and the NDP trailed the Conservatives by double digits. In that poll, Tories held a commanding lead with 47% of decided voters, compared with 21% of the Liberals and 17% of the Conservatives. Almost half of those polled, 48%, said they think the Liberals are going to win the election, compared with just under 1/3 who said the Conservatives would win. the liberal fortunes began to turn around after Trudeau's departure, and that after U.S. President Donald Trump took office, threatened to use economic force to annex Canada and began imposing punishing tariffs. Mark Carney's ascension to the helm of the Liberal Party seemed to secure the throne. The latest poll suggests 39% of Canadians think Carney would make the best Prime Minister, compared with 28% for Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre. It speaks to the personal appeal of Mark Carney right now. Delaware said of the 11-point gap, probably that's going to be the defining factor during this campaign is how well Mark Carney is able to meet those expectations and to match what's in the resume. This lead right now is based on what Canadians know of him, but not Canadians knowing him. The Liberals lead in Ontario, British Columbia, Quebec, and Atlantic Canada, while the Conservatives remain the top choice in Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba. Among men, the two parties are tied at 42% each, while 46% of women back the Liberals, compared with 33% for the Conservatives. The Liberals have a large lead over the Conservatives among those over the age of 55, while the Conservatives have small leads over the Liberals among voters 18 to 34 and 35 to 54. Delaware has said recent polls show that the top issues for voters is dealing with Trump and U.S. tariffs. He said the ballot box question as of now is which leader is best at managing Trump. For as long as the main issue of the campaign is Donald Trump and the threat of tariffs or the threat of annexation for Canada that helps Liberal leader Mark Carney, Delaware said, adding that parties like the Conservatives will need to try to change the discussion to talk about issues like affordability and inflation in order to go ahead. With Canadians looking south and being very worried about what's coming from the United States, the main issue that really propelled Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre in the lead are not as important right now to voters, Delaware said. The polling industry's professional body, the Canadian Research Insight Council, says council online surveys cannot be assigned a margin of error because they do not randomly sample the population.
ਮਾਰਚ 21 ਤੋਂ ਲੈ ਕੇ 23 ਦੇ ਦੌਰਾਨ ਕੀਤੇ ਗਏ ਪੋਲ ਦੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਨੇ ਰਿਜ਼ਲਟ ਸਾਹਮਣੇ ਆਏ ਨੇ, ਜਿਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਿ ਲਿਬਰਲ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਆਫ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦੂਸਰੀਆਂ ਪਾਰਟੀਆਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਲੋਂ 6 ਪੁਆਇੰਟ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਅਗਾਂਹ ਚੱਲ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ, ਲੀਡ ਕਰ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ। ਔਰ ਯਾਦ ਰਹੇ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਦਾਰੋ ਮਦਾਰ ਹੈ, ਇਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਗਿਣਤੀਆਂ ਮਿਣਤੀਆਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਈ ਹੋਈ ਵਡੇਰੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਤਬਦੀਲੀ ਹੈ, ਉਸ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਬਹੁਤੇਰੇ ਲੋਕ ਹੈਰਾਨੀ ਵੀ ਪ੍ਰਗਟਾ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ। ਪਰ ਇਸ ਦਾ ਵੱਡਾ ਮੁੱਖ ਕਾਰਨ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਮੰਨਿਆ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਖਾਸ ਤੌਰ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਗੁਆਂਢੀ ਮੁਲਕ ਦਾ ਰਾਸ਼ਟਰਪਤੀ ਤੇ ਨਾਲ ਦੀ ਨਾਲ ਟੈਰਿਫ ਦੀ ਕਹਾਣੀ ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਇਸ ਵਕਤ ਲੀਡ ਕਰ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ। ਔਰ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾਤਰ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕੈਨੇਡੀਅਨਸ ਨੇ ਉਹ ਇਸ ਗੱਲ ਨੂੰ ਦੇਖ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ ਕਿ ਗੁਆਂਢੀ ਮੁਲਕ ਦੇ ਮੁਖੀ ਤੇ ਨਾਲ ਦੀ ਨਾਲ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਟੈਰਿਫ ਹੈ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਕਿਹੜਾ ਵਿਅਕਤੀ ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸਭ ਤੋਂ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਬਿਹਤਰ ਡੀਲ ਕਰ ਸਕਦਾ ਹੈ। ਇਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਦੋਂ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਪੁੱਛਿਆ ਗਿਆ, ਉਹਨਾਂ 'ਚੋਂ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾਤਰ ਨੇ ਲਿਬਰਲ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਆਫ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦੇ ਮੁਖੀ ਮਾਰਕ ਕਾਰਨੀ ਨੂੰ ਇਸ ਕੰਮ ਦੇ ਯੋਗ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸਮਰੱਥ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਸਮਝਿਆ ਕੰਪੈਰੀਜ਼ਨ ਟੂ ਕੰਜ਼ਰਵੇਟਿਵ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਦੇ ਲੀਡਰ ਪੋਲੀਵਰ ਦੇ ਕੰਪੈਰੀਜ਼ਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ। ਇਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਯਾਦ ਰਹੇ ਕਿ ਪਿਛਲੇ ਕੁਝ ਕੁ ਸਮੇਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਈਆਂ ਹੋਈਆਂ ਤਬਦੀਲੀਆਂ ਦੇ ਮੁਤਾਬਕ ਪਿਛਲੇ ਸਾਲ ਦੇ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕੰਜ਼ਰਵੇਟਿਵ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਸੀ ਉਹ ਲੀਡ ਕਰ ਰਹੀ ਸੀ, ਔਰ ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਲਿਬਰਲ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਆਫ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਸੀ, ਔਰ ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ NDP ਸੀ। ਪਰ ਬਦਲਦੇ ਹਾਲਾਤਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ NDP ਜਿਹੜਾ ਖੇਮਾ ਹੈ ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਪੂਰੀ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ खुरा लग्या है, जिहड़ा कि सपोर्ट ज़्यादातर लिबरल पार्टी वाल नूं जा रही है।
इसी के साथ हमें दीजिएगा इजाज़त खबरा दा लेखा जोखा के ये सेगमेंट से, और ये सेगमेंट आप तक पहुँचा रहे थे लीकर 62। शादी ब्याह है, कोई ओकेशन है, कोई सेलिब्रेशन है, कोई मेहमान घर पे आ रहे हैं, लिकर की ज़रूरत है तो बेस्ट और डिस्काउंटेड लिकर आपको मिलेगा लिकर 62 से 6285 किंग जॉर्ज बोulevard लिकर 62।